Hi, happy Saturday. Hope everybody's doing well. It's warm enough to sit outside, so I thought I'd tell another story. And I was talking with my friend Nikki, my European adventurer friend that I went with in '77, and she lives in Sydney. And we were talking about our trip, and she reminded me of some things I'd kind of forgotten. And some of our adventures are for mature audiences only, but this one I think is shareable. So we were in Greece, we were in Athens, and we had seen a lot of what the city had to offer, and we wanted to go to an island. And everybody was going to Crete and Mykonos and those kind of places. And Nikki thought we should go somewhere more remote, like real Greece, you know. And so we got on a ferry, and we were going to the island of Kymelos. So we were on the ferry. I was kind of resting, and Nikki was talking with some younger guys on the boat, and they were asking where we were going, and she said, we're going to Kymelos. And the guy had come along the ferry and was punching our tickets, and when he took my ticket, he said, Kymelos? And I said, mm-hmm. And then he went, and so that kind of made me a little anxious, but I was resting my eyes, and I heard her talking with these kids, and they were going, Kymelos, where's that? And she goes, well, it's very remote, you know, and we're really excited, and I noticed this Greek gentleman that was sitting nearby was kind of ears perked up when she said Kymelos, and she proceeded to, you know, say what we were going to do there, and eventually this gentleman said, excuse me, he spoke very good English, and he said, excuse me, you're going to Kymelos? And she said, yes. And he said, oh, where are you going to stay? And she said, oh, in a hotel or a pension. And he goes, oh, they don't have any hotels on Kymelos or pensions. And she's kind of still trying to, you know, be excited about going to Kymelos. And she said, well, then we'll rent a room from someone. And he said, you know, they don't really like outsiders coming to Kymelos. They don't like tourists. And she was getting her, you know, she was getting a little upset with this man, and kind of her tone was getting a little bit angry with him. And she said, well, you know, how do you know so much about it? And he said, well, because I'm going to Kymelos. And he goes, I hope you have some camping gear. And of course we didn't. And I'm getting really nervous now. And she, you know, was just trying to argue with this guy about how much fun we were going to have in Kymelos, and he was just saying, well, good luck with that. So I don't know what's going to happen now, but as the trip went on, we started chatting with him some more, and he was a very nice guy. His name was John, and so we find out that he's going to Kymelos to take care of his family's shrine there. That's where his family was from. He lived in the city, but he was going to Kymelos to, you know, do this kind of Greek Orthodox ceremony or something like that. So after a while, he said, well, you know, I have a place there, and if you guys want to stay there, you can. And so once again, the kindness of strangers, and we kind of said, okay. So when it gets time to get off the boat, when we're getting closer to Kymelos, they don't even take you into the port. There was a fishing boat that came out. You had to struggle down to get into this fishing boat, and there was actually fish in there, and this older gentleman knows John, and here are these two young American girls, and the guy's eyes are kind of popping out of his head like, what's this? And so anyway, we meet this fisherman, and as we're going into the port there, John just said, well, listen, because you're with me, people are gonna, you know, accept you, but we need to make sure everybody knows you're friends of mine. And so so we were happy to have him as our friend. So we get to his place. It's very nice, very simple, but kind of a stucco-y kind of structure. Very nice inside, very very sparse, but very nice. And there are chickens running around in the yards there, and kind of through the house, and we're just thinking, wow, this is really cool. So anyway, we get our places to stay there, and we proceed to want to go down to the beach. And he goes, nobody goes to the beach, but we put on our bathing suits and we go down there, and there's nobody on the beach, and it's really hot. And there's some guys with donkeys. I remember there were only a couple of cars on the island, so everybody walks or uses donkeys. And so one guy did let us ride the donkey for a while. That was fun. I have a lot of pictures of this. But we get down to the beach and it's pretty hot, and then we come back, and at one point we decide we want to, you know, take a shower, but there's just a well, and so you pull up buckets of water. And so we were in our bathing suits and we were dumping buckets of water over each other and washing our hair, and John comes out screaming, "Stop, you're using too much water. 1 bucket a day." And so now we realize, wow, you know, surrounded by all this water, but you know, fresh water is precious. So we are learning that we're going to have to change our hygiene habits a little bit. And so anyway, John proceeds to take us around the town and is introducing us to people. And we are welcomed into, there was some gentleman there that had some kind of, you know, he was not the mayor, but he was somebody well-known, an old, much older gentleman. And he sees John and us, and he invites us into his house. And his family's there, and you know, people are kind of aware that we're in town now, so they're kind of following us around and very curious. And there's a lot of those widows that wear all black, and they sometimes when Nikki would see us, they kind of spit at us, and I thought, wow, they really don't like us, you know. But we found out it's more of a superstitious thing to keep bad juju away. So they weren't really spitting at us, but we were learning at sort of more what the customs were there. So this gentleman invites us into his house, and pretty soon there's, you know, quite a few people packed in this little house, and people were looking in the windows, and he was bringing out Retsina wine, and I don't know if you've ever had Retsina, but it's a kind of a piney tasting wine, and it was not one of my favorites. But evidently when the Romans, I think, went to conquer Greece, in order to, you know, suppress them, they would take pine logs and throw it in their wine to ruin it, so they wouldn't have any wine. But the Greeks showed them, you know, they drank it and they said, we like it, and they continued to drink it. So I wasn't a fan. But so we're drinking a lot of wine, and he's bringing out different kinds of food, and I remember there was this cheese. A lot of the cheese was really kind of stinky, but this one particular cheese was called manure cheese, and it was rolled in this brown stuff, and I thought, oh God, please don't let it be manure. But I was getting a little, it was getting very, you know, warm in this place, and all the smells were kind of overwhelming. So as the day progressed, and we're sitting, Nikki and I were sitting around the table, and John and this fellow, and then he goes and he gets up and he goes and he gets something out of a cupboard, and it's this big bottle, and it's some kind of ouzo. And so now he's pouring us glasses of ouzo, and you know, I liked ouzo. I'd had it before, so we're drinking that, and pretty soon John isn't drinking anymore, and then he keeps pouring Nikki and I and him some, and so anyway, I'm thinking, well, I don't think I want any more, and he keeps, you know, pouring it and puts the bottle down and drink that, you know. So after a while, I think John's giving Nikki the eye, like, you know, you might want to drop out of this at some point. It's sort of become a competition. And it kind of made me think of that scene in Temple, you know, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, where that, I forget her name, she's having that drinking contest with that guy somewhere in Tibet. And, you know, they're just, you know, like, I'm drinking, I'm going to win. And I'm thinking, uh-oh. And so Nikki kind of drops out. And then I'm looking at her, and she's like, Karen, I think it's, you know, I think you should stop. And so I try to back out, and he's not having it. He's like, no. He keeps pouring, so I keep drinking, he keeps drinking, and it's just like, oh Lordy, you know. So anyway, eventually we're both kind of reeling a little bit, and I think he just stopped pouring, and I was like, thank God, you know. And I look up, and there's just all these people looking in the windows, and they're all just very excited, you know, that we're there. And so we go out into the backyard, and they're having a party, and there's music, and everybody's dancing, and it's, you know, it's hot. And after a while, I'm like, oh Lord, I think I'm gonna get sick. And so I try to figure out, the bathroom is sort of outside, and there's a door, and I'm trying to get in, and, you know, and pulling on the door, and I'm like, you know, I don't even know how to say, open up in Greek, but I just was like, yeah. So the door opens and it's my friend Nikki. I pull her out, I run in there, and I just spew all over the toilet, and I'm just so sick. And sadly, I don't think I cleaned it. I don't remember really what happened. I found out that some guys, you know, they carried me back to John's house, and it was quite a story, I guess. I woke up the next morning and found out that, you know, we were sort of like these American celebrities, and I'm just, you know, so hungover. It's horrible. And so after a while, I got up, and Nikki and I decided to take a walk. And I can't remember what John was doing, but anyway, we started walking down the street, and people started coming out of their houses and, you know, greeting us, and like we were old friends, and they would have us come into their house. And of course, the first thing they would do was pour me a glass of ouzo, a short shot. And I, you know, I was trying to be polite, but I would try to pretend like I drank it and then like pour it, you know, in a plant or something. It was so hard to turn down these lovely gestures of hospitality, but wow, I was really not feeling well. And so I became, you know, I was sort of like, wow, that girl that, you know, drank grandpa under the table. And there was a taverna in town. It was the only like bar restaurant in town. And we ended up going there, and they only had like one special, and it was just some kind of stewed meat with this brown sauce on it. And, you know, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't very appetizing looking. And of course, now that we've met everybody in town, we were welcomed into the taverna, and they had a jukebox in there, and there was a fellow, I think he was the son of the owner, and he was disabled, mentally and physically. I don't know what the story was exactly, but he really took a shine to me. I don't know what the attraction was, but he wanted me to be his girlfriend. And he would light cigarettes and try to put them in my mouth. And I'd quit smoking, so of course I didn't want to. But occasionally I would take a little puff, and that seemed to encourage him, so I tried not to smoke. And then we'd put music on, and he'd want me to dance with him. And so anyway, I, you know, kind of had a Greek boyfriend for a little while I was there. And I remember he took pictures of me, and anyway, it was pretty hilarious, this whole thing. So when we left, we got a big send-off, and I sometimes wonder if my former boyfriend has a picture of me up in the taverna. But boy, that was a crazy time on the island of Kymelos, and I don't know where John is. And but I remember once they knew that we knew John, we were, you know, we were part of the town, and they were very welcoming to us after that. So I love Greece, and I love the memories. So I'm going to try to hold those memories in my head, because I think it's going to be a while before we travel again. So anyway, everybody have a wonderful day. I love you. I miss you. And stay away from the ouzo.